Every year when monsoon season is upon us, we all know what that means, possible flooding. Over the last 2 years alone, there have been record amounts of rainfall across the nation prior to monsoon season. What does this mean to the synthetic turf industry? It means it could cost you and your customers thousands of dollars in damages. Just because your turf product drains 30+ inches per hour per square yard does not mean your subbase does. Does the turf you choose and place have anything to do with drainage? It sure does. It's the first thing you should consider when choosing a product for each application. Synthetic turf has evolved over the last 2 decades, and most synthetic turf products on the market today have drainage capabilities. Most turf products are hole punched to allow for proper drainage. Many installers and clients primarily choose synthetic turf by its appearance and feel, ignoring the fact that the product they choose may cause long-term drainage issues. Turf manufacturers are understanding the importance for their products to allow certain amounts of water and fluids to drain through the backing. Punching holes in the backing to allow for positive drainage has become the only way. The drainage holes vary with each manufacturer and each product. I have seen drainage holes from 2, 3, 4 inches and up to 8 inches on center. Bottom line is the more drainage holes, the better drainage. The closer the holes are punched allows for contaminants to make their way through the backing and into the soil, simulating natural grass. Synthetic turf products that have drainage holes farther apart from each other will create slow permeability rates. This means that excess water and fluids will not drain as fast and may cause flooding. Manufacturers are now creating synthetic turf that is 100% permeable. This means that turf can take on a heavy rainfall, but will it take a backseat to the flooding? You have heard me say often that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. This can happen very fast after flooding occurs. There is a misconception that when it comes to understanding drainage and synthetic turf, just because your turf product says it can drain 30+ inches per hour doesn't mean your subbase will. Understanding subbase materials is very crucial to a successful installation. Most turf installers think that they could just cover up bad soils with good drainage soils. Eventually, the underlying soils that are high in clay and are conglomerates become fully absorbent and then reject water intrusion. This is when flooding occurs. If your subbase is of poor quality, then I recommend over-excavating, remove, and replace with a quality imported drainage material. If the area is known to have excessive flooding, then placing clean crushed aggregates to prevent erosion of the subgrade and subbase materials will be needed. When choosing imported subbase materials for drainage and good permeability, I recommend aggregates that are created with high quality rock, sand, and gravel. Below are types of materials that I recommend for placing underneath synthetic turf. When placed in smaller lifts and compacted properly, these materials will retain density, allow permeability, and withstand excessive water penetration. Crushed decomposed granite, limestone chat, 3/8- mixture, or 3/4 washed limestone. Getting the water to exit. Many contractors and homeowners overlook potential flooding in their design. They overlook poor drainage, thinking that placing synthetic turf will assist in the muddy backyard. Your yard may not become muddy anymore, but the water that it created that mud must go somewhere. I have witnessed many installations where poor drainage caused extensive amounts of damage, flooding houses, buildings, restaurants, and sporting facilities, all due to ignoring existing factors. Below are some factors to look for when designing or installing synthetic turf on all projects. Does your synthetic turf drain? How much does it drain? Is the area located in a flood area? Is the installation in the path where large volumes of stormwater will affect the design? Is the area higher than the building's foundation level and/or stucco weep screen? Will you have to slope and regrade areas to recreate positive drainage and exit excessive floodwater? Does the rooftop, balcony, or mezzanine have scoffer exits? Will you have to redesign and connect underground piping from the scoffers? Have you calculated the size and square footage of the rooftop, balcony, and/or mezzanine that will dump rainwater on your installation? Storm and rainwater must exit its initial surface and drain until it reaches its settling point. If the building's rooftop is 10,000 square feet in surface area, then 1 inch of rain will produce approximately 8,000 gallons of water flowing onto your turf. Where will this added surface water travel? Does the existing area have drainage issues? And/or does the soils remain saturated? If a weed suppressor is to be installed, is it permeable? How fast does it drain? Does your installation require contouring? If so, you will create more issues by building mounds preventing the escape of water. There are many factors to think about on every new project that is to be completed. Knowing and being aware can prevent issues when it comes to drainage and flooding. If the area you want to place synthetic turf in looks like this, you will need to reconstruct, the entire area to an elevation that will allow for the exit of water. Exit drains must be installed to prevent this type of flooding. You will need to respect the sloping towards adjacent properties as well. Exit drains, French drains, and catch basins. Excessive water runoff that floods synthetic turf areas will cause failure in the subbase. Exit drains, French drains, and catch basins should be considered when installing turf in areas where flooding may occur. Make sure your backfilling of trenches around pipes and drains is firmly compacted. Structures and drainage. It is crucial to understand how structures that are outside your installations may aid flooding and damages. Rooftop balconies and mezzanines route floodwaters to drains and scoffers that many times exit where your installations are being placed. I recommend speaking with the client and communicate possible drainage and flooding issues. If the elevations are not correct prior to your installation, they will need to be adjusted by either regrading or placing exit drains. When doing your initial job site meeting, it is a must to inspect the surroundings to ensure excessive floodwater can be managed away from your installation. Before you go and start installing your turf, I recommend doing water tests to ensure the existing areas have proper slope, drainage, and place for the water to exit. Rooftop, balcony, mezzanines, and scoffer exits. Here is a beautiful installation by a successful turf contractor that relied upon existing drains to do their job, but they didn't. The drains failed because they were clogged to begin with. Once the rain started and flooding began, this storefront was overcome by waters that reached 6 inches higher than the weep screed and caused damage to the interior. The roof alone produced more water runoff than the installation had received. The scoffer exits added additional gallons of rainwater, which contributed to the damage. Prior to installing any turf in a backyard that's rear elevation is higher than the foundation of the home or building, it is imperative that you do not take on the responsibility of the floodwaters. This putting green was placed in the center of the yard. The putting green had to be raised and leveled so that the golf ball wouldn't roll off the surface. Raising of the putting green's edge near the house caused the entire length of the putting green to be much higher than the threshold of the patio door. This caused flooding into the interior. The roof scoffers added to the problem by adding additional rainwater to flood the turf area. I recommend installing catch basins, drains, and or piping to allow for the escape of the flood waters. Foundation level and stucco weep screed. It is very important to keep the elevation of compacted materials below foundation weep screeds. Keeping all hardscape and landscape below the weep screed is required by most building codes and prevents water from entering the interior. Creating positive slopes and exit of hardscape floodwater. When proposed turf areas are sloped towards areas of synthetic turf, I recommend installing exit drains to allow water runoff from the hardscape onto the turf and exit the yard successfully. And again, make sure your trenches around the pipes and drains are firmly compacted. Drainage pipe and compaction. I have repeated the concern for compacting trenches when backfilling. This project definitely had poor compaction where drainage pipes were installed. This poor workmanship has now left depressions in the surface. These depressions no doubt will cause trip hazards and may cause injury. When placing drainage pipe, it is crucial that you compact the trench in lifts to prevent this from happening. I recommend a mixture of clean 3/4 inch aggregate with the existing soils to prevent future settlement. Respecting the weep screed. When installing synthetic turf between building foundations, it is imperative that you not only slope the area out and away from the building, but keep the elevations below the weep screed. Weep screed is a building material used along the base of an exterior stucco wall to prevent water from intruding the plate line and into the building. If you place your turf higher than the weep screed, it may cause water to penetrate the building's interior. Make sure you maintain positive slope between buildings to ensure that the excess water can escape. Vegetation and drainage. Over the years, I have seen contractors ignore placing a weed barrier under the synthetic turf installation. The once beautiful installation that they were so proud of turned into a nightmare several months later. The existing crabgrass and broadleaf weeds grew up through the drainage holes of the synthetic turf and clogged it. Skipping this very important step can cause misery to both the client and the contractor and may cause flooding of the area due to the drainage holes being clogged. Does your weed barrier drain like your turf does? Placing a weed barrier below synthetic turf after removing natural grass is crucial. Using an inferior weed barrier that is not permeable and does not allow water to flow through quickly will cause flooding of the area. I recommend using a quality weed barrier that allows water and air to permeate 10 gallons per square foot. Did you know that excessive flooding may cause growth of vegetation like mushrooms and weeds? Excessive moisture will allow all types of things to grow under the turf. It is best to keep your turf dry between cleanings and rainfall. Turf ribbons, borders, and drainage. When placing turf ribbons and borders, it is crucial to compact the subbase to perfection. Most turf ribbons and borders receive water runoff, and if the base is not compacted to 80% or higher, the existing water will saturate the compacted materials and cause settling, which may cause injury due to being a trip hazard. I do not recommend designing turf ribbons into your project unless you have positive slope to allow all fluids to exit the area quickly. If not, your subbase will settle. Putting greens, traps, and drainage. A majority of putting green turf does not have drainage holes punched into the backing. This is to maintain integrity of the subbase. The subbase must maintain its hardness to prevent any changes to the putting green surface. I recommend keeping all water away from putting greens. If you elevate your putting green to keep floodwaters away, make sure the elevation does not hinder positive slope and drainage to surrounding areas. Sand and grass traps must have an exit drain installed to remove floodwaters from filling up and causing settlement. Bocce courts and lawn bowling have become very popular over the last decade. Floodwaters can damage these surfaces to where replacement is the only option. If there is any settlement due to improper drainage, it will cause irregular ball roll. Make sure you design the surrounding area to slope away from the courts. Pet turf and drainage. In creating a successful pet turf area, it starts and ends with the fluidity of all substances penetrating through the surface of the turf. If the synthetic turf product does not have the ability to drain quickly, bacteria may form and contaminants may remain between drainage holes and create lingering odors. As I mentioned before, make sure that the compacted base drains well and has good permeating qualities. If the soil in the area does not drain or permeate, you'll have to remove and replace with the proper drainage material that will. Contouring, drainage, and flooding. When should I go flat or when should I contour? This is a common question that I get asked all the time. When drainage is not a concern and you are free to be as creative as you'd like with your installation, contouring will set your work apart. When the subgrade materials are contoured by grading slopes and small mounds, the beauty of the synthetic turf comes alive, allowing the fibers to open and close, resulting in a natural looking surface. There'll be many installations where you'll have to decide whether to grade the subgrade flat or contoured. Some clients have preferences that you should accommodate since it's their project. There'll be installations that proper drainage supersedes all requests for contouring and being flat. When you contour synthetic turf, you must understand that you're creating a slope where water runoff could possibly flood. If the exterior of the contour is up against the wall, curbing, or building, you must be careful not to create an area where runoff from the contouring will cause damage. Drainage and snowfall. In many states where there is record snowfall, I recommend placing a firm, compacted base with quality drainage rock. When the subbase is overly saturated, excessive water runoff will occur. Make sure you have positive drainage away from the turf area. Rooftops, balconies, and mezzanines. Synthetic turf on rooftops, balconies, and mezzanines must have proper drainage. I strongly recommend placing a drainage grid below that balcony or rooftop application so water can run through the synthetic turf and drainage grid to allow water to escape. Without a drainage grid, the longevity of the synthetic turf will be depleted due to thermal contraction and the buildup of contaminants. To sum it all up, when existing soils below the turf are saturated with excessive rainwater, the compacted subbase will not receive any more. When this happens, the drainage holes become useless. When torrential rains hit hard, this action speeds up the water's escape and may cause damage to surrounding areas. It is very important for you and your team to learn all you can about elevations, slopes, drainage, and flooding when it comes to installing synthetic turf. And like I always say, there's never enough time to do the job right, but always enough time to do it over. Don't be one of these guys. JW out.